Our story begins with news reports flooding the city about a series of mysterious murders. There's no discernible pattern connecting the victims by age, gender, or background. The perpetrator appears to commit indiscriminate crimes that leave the entire metropolitan area in fear. Each report grows more frantic than the last, with reporters struggling to make sense of the seemingly random violence that has gripped their once peaceful city. The police confirmed these are copycat murders. Citizens lock their doors earlier, avoid walking alone, and eye strangers with increasing suspicion. We meet a young woman standing before her deceased sister's grave, her mind swirling with news reports about the recent murders. Her expression is haunted, eyes red-rimmed from crying and lack of sleep. She traces her fingers over the freshly carved name on the headstone, memories of her sister's laugh, her smile, her dreams for the future, all cut short by senseless violence. The cemetery around her is quiet, but in her mind, the chaos of media reports continues its relentless assault. She's not just grieving, she's searching for answers, for patterns, for anything that might explain why her sister was taken. She also reads about the murder of 4 members of a family, and it is revealed as a robber murder. Later, at her workplace, she's compiling information on these murder cases when a wave of nausea suddenly overtakes her. The crime scene photos spread before her are particularly gruesome. Bodies displayed with strange numbers carved into their flesh. Her stomach lurches as she recognizes the same signature that was found on her sister's body. Her colleague Johan notices her discomfort from across the busy newsroom and approaches her desk, his face lined with concern. He inquires if she's experiencing another headache, the same kind she's been having since the funeral. Concerned about her well-being, he suggests taking her and another co-worker to a nearby restaurant to help her relax, insisting that she needs to take a break from the constant immersion in these horrific cases. Despite her insistence that she's fine and can continue working, Johan reminds her that she said the same thing last time before getting sick right at her desk, causing a scene that embarrassed her in front of the entire office. Another colleague joins their conversation, mentioning that her reaction is completely understandable, considering it's only been a few weeks since the tragic incident involving her sister. They exchange knowing glances over her head, their concern evident, but also tinged with uncertainty about how to properly support someone experiencing such profound grief. The young woman reflects on how close they all were before everything changed. The 4 of them, herself, Johan, and 2 other colleagues, used to go out for drinks after work, celebrating story deadlines and commiserating over difficult assignments. Her sister would sometimes join them, bringing laughter and a fresh perspective from outside the news industry. Now those gatherings feel like memories from another lifetime, one where death wasn't constantly looming over their conversations. She remembers being called to the forensic department, where they showed her the corpse, asking her to confirm the identity. The clinical brightness of the morgue still haunts her dreams, the harsh fluorescent lights, the antiseptic smell barely masking the underlying scent of death, the cold metal of the examination table. Through tears that wouldn't stop flowing, she had confirmed it was her sister, noticing with horror the number 2 carved into her sister's hand, the signature mark of the infamous serial killer known only as Number. The forensic technician had pointed it out specifically, asking if it meant anything to her, but she had been too overwhelmed by grief to respond. During their dinner at a local restaurant, Johan asks if the murder count has reached 30 while picking at his food without much appetite. His question isn't just professional curiosity, it's tinged with fear, with the understanding that any of them could be next. His coworker responds that it's actually higher than 40 if they include the copycat killings that have begun to emerge. The conversation grows more animated as another colleague laments how the world has gone mad, with robberies and stabbings becoming so commonplace that they hardly make the front page anymore. The police seem ineffective, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of crimes. In frustration, he suggests that executing all criminals might be the solution, a harsh statement that falls heavily on the table, met with uncomfortable silence. The young woman interjects after a moment, her voice quiet but intense. She points out that nothing will bring her sister back, not even the death of whoever killed her. She explains how reporting on these crimes, day after day, makes her feel like she's witnessing the same tragedy repeating endlessly, changing only in the specific details, but identical in its senseless destruction. Then, her voice growing more animated, she wonders if they need something more fundamental, like identifying future criminals and eliminating the crimes before they can harm others. Her colleagues exchange concerned glances, recognizing the dangerous territory her grief is leading her toward, but unsure how to respond to such a radical suggestion. After dinner, she leaves for home with Yoan, accompanying her partway through the darkening streets. The city feels different at night now, shadows harboring potential threats, every footstep behind them causing a moment of tension. Yoan advises her to take the brighter street with security cameras, and suggests she try doing something enjoyable or meet nice people to distract herself, perhaps visiting an art gallery she used to love or reconnecting with old friends outside work. His concern is genuine, born from years of friendship and the shared trauma of the recent violence. She thanks him with a small laugh that doesn't reach her eyes, appreciating his concern while knowing that nothing will truly help except finding answers. They part ways at a well-lit intersection, Yoan watching until she turns the corner before heading to his own apartment. Unknown to them, our protagonist, the vigilante known as Number, watches silently from a rooftop. His silhouette is dark against the night sky, his features indistinguishable from this distance. Through his eyes, we see the world differently. Numbers hovering above people's heads, most showing zeros or ones, occasionally higher digits that draw his focused attention. He observes the young reporter with particular interest, seeing something in her that resonates with his own mission. Back at her apartment, the young woman reviews footage and notes, searching desperately for patterns among the killings. Her living room has become an investigation center, walls covered with crime scene photos, newspaper clippings, and red string connecting related events. The only connection she can find between victims is the numbers carved into their bodies, ranging from 1 to 9, seemingly assigned at random. She ponders the killer's motives deep into the night and thinks about the numbers, wondering if it's the work of one person or a group. The question of why someone would leave such an obvious signature puzzles her. Is it arrogance, a message, or something more complex? She recalls interviewing survivors of Numbers' attacks, their testimonies creating a confusing and contradictory picture. One survivor, a young woman named Lee Ja-yeon, with bandages still covering her wounds, described how everything happened suddenly while she was going out to eat in a place which she never went to. The attack came from nowhere, the assailant appearing like a shadow before disappearing just as quickly. Another survivor, a college student, Choi Chang-won, with nervous eyes that darted around the room during the interview, recounted hanging out with friends on a deserted road when a stranger approached. Something about the man's demeanor had triggered his instincts that something was wrong, allowing him to react quickly enough to escape with only minor injuries. The young woman wonders how these people survived and what could have possibly saved them. A third survivor, older and calmer than the others, remembered the most puzzling detail: the killer saying she had number 1 and wasn't a target before simply walking away, leaving her unharmed. Frustrated by the incomplete information and contradictory accounts, the young woman slumps onto her couch, empty coffee cups and takeout containers, evidence of her obsessive investigation. She wonders aloud how a killer could continue operating so efficiently without hiding bodies or eliminating witnesses. The pattern defies conventional criminal behavior, suggesting either incredible luck or a purpose behind the seeming randomness that she hasn't yet grasped, and is surprised how it's possible in Korea. The next day, she, Lee Se-la, discovers an intriguing email in her inbox with the subject line, "I know about number." Unlike the dozen other tips and conspiracy theories she receives daily, something about this one feels different, more specific, more credible. After careful consideration, she arranges an interview at the location specified in the email, ignoring the warning signs that would normally cause her to involve the police, or at least inform a colleague of her whereabouts. Upon arriving at the designated location, an abandoned warehouse district on the outskirts of the city, she immediately feels uneasy. The area is deserted, the only sounds being distant traffic, and the wind whistling through empty buildings. As she checks the address again, she hears footsteps behind her and freezes, remembering victims' testimonies about encounters in similar deserted areas. Fear rises in her throat as the footsteps grow louder and faster, someone clearly running toward her. She attempts to flee, but trips on the uneven pavement and falls hard, scraping her palms and knees. Just as the assailant reaches for her, Yoan appears unexpectedly from around a corner, calling her name. Confusion replaces fear as she asks what he's doing there. His presence in this isolated location at this exact moment seems too coincidental. Yoan urgently grabs her arm, his grip surprisingly tight, telling her they need to run immediately. When she persists in questioning why he's there, he explains that he works nearby and saw someone attacking her. His explanation comes too quickly, too rehearsed. He suggests they head to a restaurant area through an alley shortcut, pulling her along before she can fully process her suspicions. To her growing horror, the alley turns out to be a dead end, brick walls rising high on three sides with no escape route. When she turns around to confront Yoan, he strikes her with a metal pipe he had concealed behind his back. The impact is devastating, sending her crashing to the ground, with blood flowing from a gash in her forehead, her vision blurring as she struggles to remain conscious. The person she thought was attacking her earlier joins Yoan in the alley, complaining about how fast Yoan had been running. He's middle-aged, wearing a nondescript jacket, looking nothing like the monster she expected, but terrifying in his ordinariness. Yoan dismisses his accomplice's concern, saying all that matters is that he brought her to the perfect location for their crime. Isolated, abandoned, where screams won't be heard and bodies might not be discovered for days. Barely conscious, but fighting to understand, she asks why they're doing this. The fake attacker explains with disturbing casualness that her sister had caught on too quickly to their operation and was difficult to kill. She protests weakly that it was Number who killed her sister. The signature on her hand proved it. With a chilling laugh, Yoan reveals he's grateful for the infamous killer's reputation. He explains that by carving a number into her arm, everyone will assume it's Number's work, giving them breathing room to continue their own criminal activities without scrutiny. Yoan tells his accomplice he can do whatever he wants with her before they finish her off, and says once she stops breathing, she is mine. The implication of his words sends a wave of revulsion through her, but despite her situation, the young woman glares at them with pure hatred in her eyes, refusing to show fear even as her strength fades. Suddenly, the real Number appears silently behind them at the alley entrance. his presence unnoticed until he speaks. When they startle and demand he leave, threatening violence, Number activates his power. Through his perspective, we see the numbers floating above their heads. 4 above Yoan and 1 above the accomplice. The numbers glow with an otherworldly light that only he can perceive. Number announces that he's finally found them, referring to them as 4 and 1, a cryptic statement that puzzles everyone present. We learn through flashback that 3 hours earlier, the young woman had interviewed a survivor who claimed Number had saved her life and her family members from her abusive ex-boyfriend. The ex had planned to start a fire that would have killed not just her, but her entire family. The survivor had described Number not as a senseless killer, but as someone with purpose, with knowledge that seemed impossible. Number approaches the men with deliberate, unhurried steps. The fake attacker grabs a pipe from the ground, raising it as a weapon, but Number knocks him unconscious with a single powerful punch that demonstrates his superior strength and training. Examining Yoan more carefully, Number declares him Number 4 and a target for elimination, his tone clinical, as if delivering a medical diagnosis rather than a death sentence. Yoan attacks in desperation, but is quickly overpowered. Number stabs him in the leg with practiced precision and kicks his accomplice's unconscious body to ensure he remains subdued. The young woman watches this unfold from her position on the ground, her reporter's mind still functioning despite her injuries, connecting dots between the survivor's testimonies she's collected. She begins to realize that Number seems to have the ability to predict future events, to know who will become killers before they fully embrace that path. Yoan brandishes a small knife in a last desperate attempt to defend himself, but Number responds with brutal efficiency, stomping repeatedly on his head until he's barely conscious. After calmly recording the time and date in a small notebook he carries, Number tosses away Yoan's ID after examining it and declares that by killing him, he can save 4 future victims who would have died by Yoan's hand. With the clinical detachment of someone performing a necessary but unpleasant task, Number asks if Yoan has any last words or wishes before execution. Coughing blood and struggling to remain conscious, Yoan questions who Number is and what kind of person would willingly die. The question seems to hold special meaning for Number, who asks if that's his final question before stabbing Yoan's neck with precision. Despite Yoan's desperate, gurgling pleas for mercy, Number explains that sparing him is impossible, given what he would become. He delivers the fatal blow without hesitation or apparent emotional response, then methodically carves the number 4 into Yoan's hand, his signature not a taunt, but a ledger of lives saved. The accomplice begins crawling away during this exchange, but Number ignores him, explaining to the young woman that number 1s aren't targets, because killing one person to save another doesn't change the overall balance of mortality in the world. Standing up despite her injuries, blood still flowing from her head wound, the young woman makes an unexpected offer to help Number. As a reporter with access to police records and the ability to investigate potential criminals, she suggests she could identify murderers in advance and help conceal his activities. Her proposal reveals how deeply the loss of her sister has affected her moral compass, pushing her toward vigilante justice when legal methods failed. Number studies her with new interest, asking if she's truly of the same mind, before removing his mask to reveal his face. An ordinary face that could belong to anyone, remarkable only in its unremarkability. The moment feels like a potential partnership forming, but then Number asks if she has any last words, confusing her completely. Through Number's perspective, we see what she cannot. The number 12 floating above her head, marking her as someone destined to kill 12 people in the future if left alive. Her potential for violence exceeds even Yoan's, making her a primary target despite her current offer of alliance. Later, police swarm the alley crime scene, lights flashing and forensic teams collecting evidence. The young woman's body lies on the ground alongside Yoan's, the number 12 carved into her hand. News vans gather behind the police tape as reporters, her former colleagues, struggle to maintain professional detachment while covering the death of one of their own. The news reports mention 2 more victims of number. The police sources suggest one may be a copycat killing due to subtle deviations from the established pattern. At a quiet cafe across town the next morning, our protagonist Number sits by a window, drinking coffee, while studying notes in a small, leather-bound book. His appearance is deliberately unremarkable. Average height, average build, clothes that don't draw attention. This ordinariness is his greatest disguise, allowing him to move through the world unnoticed despite being the city's most wanted killer. Number prefers the window seat in any establishment, not for the view, but because it allows him to observe people both inside and outside the cafe simultaneously. Using his unique power, he scans passing pedestrians, seeing the glowing numbers that float above their heads, the number 0 above most ordinary citizens, occasional ones, and the rarer higher digits that immediately capture his attention and get noted in his book. For Number, target selection follows a simple principle. Those with higher numbers die first. Each digit represents future victims, so eliminating someone with 8 above their head theoretically saves 8 innocent lives. In his mind, this mathematical approach to murder is not just justified, but morally necessary. Before the waitress can return with his order, he's already gone, leaving exact payment on the table. No change needed, no interaction required, minimizing the memory of his presence. In a restaurant across town that evening, a group of drunk thugs harasses other customers, their behavior growing increasingly belligerent as the night progresses. They shout obscenities, make inappropriate comments to female patrons, and generally create an atmosphere of intimidation. When a nervous employee finally gathers the courage to request they quiet down, one particularly aggressive thug responds by throwing a bottle against the wall, the glass shattering dramatically and causing several customers to flinch. The restaurant owner watches this display with increasing concern, noting how customers are requesting their checks early and leaving. The economic impact is immediate, but his greater worry is for safety. Situations like this have escalated to violence in other establishments. The thugs seem to feed off the fear they generate, their behavior growing worse as the evening continues. One particularly intoxicated thug boasts loudly about a recent court case, describing how he avoided jail time for assault by intimidating the witnesses. He recounts with disturbing pride how his victim's father came begging him to drop countercharges, and how he humiliated the man in public. His friends laugh at the story, encouraging his worst impulses with their approval. Later, after the restaurant staff finally manage to usher them out, the same thug insists on driving, despite his obvious intoxication. His friends pile into the car, too drunk themselves to object or recognize the danger. While driving recklessly through city streets, the thug deliberately accelerates his car toward pedestrians crossing at a marked crosswalk, laughing at their frightened expressions as they scramble to safety. In a moment that defies explanation, Number appears in the back seat of the moving vehicle, pressing a knife against the thug's throat with steady pressure, not enough to cut immediately, but sufficient to demand complete attention. His sudden manifestation is shocking, seemingly impossible, yet he speaks with calm authority, commanding the thug to turn the wheel away from the pedestrians. The car swerves violently, tires screeching as it narrowly misses the crossing pedestrians by mere inches. The thug's friends, passed out in the passenger seats, don't even register the near collision or the stranger in their midst. Number directs the increasingly terrified driver to continue to an isolated location, an abandoned parking lot surrounded by defunct factories where no witnesses will observe what happens next. Once there, Number explains with clinical detachment that the flickering number above the thug's head indicates immediate danger. He will kill someone within the next 10 or 24 hours if not stopped. The thug, sobering quickly in the face of mortal danger, protests that he wasn't going to kill anyone, that he was just having fun, that the pedestrians were never in real danger. His denials fall on deaf ears, as Number has seen this pattern play out too many times before. Number asks the thug to move to the passenger seat and asks him if he has any words or wishes before killing him. They struggle inside the car, the thug fighting for his life with desperate strength. Number demonstrates both physical prowess and tactical thinking, grabbing the thug's head and slamming it repeatedly through the side window until the glass shatters. Blood streams down the thug's face as Number delivers the fatal blow, stabbing him with precision and efficiency. After confirming the kill, Number meticulously carves the appropriate number into the thug's hand, a macabre accounting system for his personal crusade against future violence. Number cleans the knife, changes his gloves, and drives away in the thug's car, planning to abandon it in a location where it won't be found for days. He reflects that everything went according to plan. Another potential killer eliminated before they could claim their victims. Another successful calculation in his mathematical approach to preventing murder. The next day brings an unexpected encounter that will change Number's carefully ordered existence. While walking through a busy commercial district, he notices a young woman named Hyun struggling with several heavy boxes outside a small shop. What catches his attention isn't her obvious distress, but the number 1 floating above her head, marking her as someone who will take only one life, typically not worth his attention. As Number observes, Hyun stumbles on an uneven section of sidewalk, losing her grip on the precariously balanced boxes. Acting on instinct rather than calculation, Number moves quickly to help her, catching both her arm to stabilize her and one of the falling boxes. In that moment of physical contact, something unprecedented occurs. The number above Hyun's head suddenly jumps from 1 to 16, a change that Number has never witnessed before in all his years of using his ability. Confused and intrigued by this anomaly, Number helps her gather the scattered contents of the dropped box. He notices her name tag identifies her as Moji Hyun, a detail he files away for future investigation. Hyun thanks him profusely for his help, embarrassed by her clumsiness, but grateful for the assistance from a stranger. Before Number can engage further, or understand the significance of the changing number, the shop owner emerges from the doorway, his expression immediately shifting from customer-friendly to irritated upon seeing Hyun. He scolds her harshly for being clumsy, warning that she might break something expensive and it would come out of her already meager wages. His treatment borders on abusive, particularly when he notices her reddened eyes. Without asking permission, the shop owner grabs a bottle of eye drops from his pocket and approaches Hyun, who immediately backs away, protesting that she doesn't need them. Ignoring her objections, he roughly administers the drops, forcing her eyelids open despite her clear discomfort. After this uncomfortable encounter, Hyun rubs her irritated eyes before gathering her belongings and hurrying away to her next job, her posture speaking of someone accustomed to such treatment. Number follows at a distance, his curiosity about the changing number overriding his usual methodical approach to targets. He observes Hyun arrive late to her second workplace, a small restaurant where she works as a waitress. Her boss immediately confronts her in the back alley, berating her for tardiness before slapping her across the face with enough force to leave a red mark. What surprises Number isn't the violence itself. He's witnessed countless acts of casual cruelty, but Hyun's response. She accepts the abuse without complaint or resistance, apologizing and immediately moving to begin her shift. Number realizes she's calculated that enduring such treatment is worth the higher pay this particular establishment offers compared to other jobs available to someone in her circumstances. The evening takes a darker turn when a teenage boy in the restaurant recognizes Hyun, pointing her out loudly to his friends as the daughter of that murderer from elementary school. The revelation spreads quickly through the restaurant, customers whispering and staring, some even requesting different servers. The humiliation is palpable, but Hyun continues working, her face a careful mask, hiding whatever emotions rage beneath. As the shift continues, Hyun begins experiencing strange sensations in her eyes, the same eyes that had been forcibly treated with drops earlier. The discomfort grows until she's forced to run to an alley behind the restaurant, gasping for air as the world transforms before her. To her shock and confusion, she begins seeing weird numbers floating above people's heads as they pass by the alley entrance. Zeros and ones mostly, with occasional higher digits. From his observation point on a nearby rooftop, Number watches this development with growing fascination. Not only has Hyun's number increased dramatically from 1 to 16, and now to an astonishing 4,326, but she appears to have spontaneously developed the same ability he possesses, the power to see the numbers that predict future violence. In all his years of hunting, he's never encountered another person with this gift, making Hyun unique and potentially dangerous. Through a series of flashbacks, we learn about Hyun's childhood trauma. As an 8-year-old girl, she watched on television as her father was arrested for a series of brutal murders that shocked the community. The cameras captured his face partially covered as police led him away, while reporters detailed his crimes in the background. 11 victims whose lives were ended by the man she called father. The aftermath was devastating for young Hyun and her mother. Her mother lost her job when customers refused to be served by the wife of a notorious killer. Overnight, their family name became synonymous with violence and evil, forcing them to move repeatedly as neighbors discovered their identity and made life unbearable. School became a daily nightmare for Hyun, with children clustering on the opposite side of the classroom, whispering and pointing whenever she entered a room. Teachers who should have protected her often reinforced her isolation, either through neglect or active participation in her ostracism. One particularly cruel teacher told young Hyun directly that she was simply unlucky to have been born to a killer. Nothing personal, just bad genetic fortune that would follow her forever. Back in the present, Hyun sits on a park bench, bewildered by the numbers she sees floating above everyone passing by. Most are small, 0, 1, sometimes 2 or 3. But the sheer impossibility of what she's experiencing leaves her questioning her sanity. Her friend Min approaches, carrying a small gift bag and wearing a cheerful expression that stands in stark contrast to Hyun's obvious distress. Min presents the gift, wishing Hyun a happy birthday, a celebration she had completely forgotten amid the chaos of her life and the new strange phenomenon affecting her vision. When she looks at Min, she sees 302 floating above his head, though she has no context for understanding what this means. She takes the gift with trembling hands, the small kindness breaking through her carefully constructed, emotional walls. Overwhelmed by everything, the abuse from her employers, the public humiliation from being recognized, the strange numbers now pervading her vision, Hyun breaks down completely. Through tears, she confesses to Min the daily struggles she faces, how her boss hit her again, how children from elementary school recognized and mocked her, how the shop owner forced those painful eye drops on her despite her protests. The catharsis of finally sharing these burdens provides momentary relief, though the numbers continue to hover in her vision. Min responds with appropriate anger at her treatment, particularly the forced administration of eye drops, which he correctly identifies as assault. He suggests she report the shop owner, but Hyun laughs bitterly at the suggestion, questioning what justice she could expect with her infamous family name. In a system that already views her with suspicion as the daughter of the infamous Moji killer, her complaints would likely be dismissed, or, worse, twisted against her. Recognizing the depth of her distress, Min suggests they forget about her troubles for the evening and focus on celebrating her birthday. He proposes various activities designed to lift her spirits and provide distraction from the constant weight of her family legacy and her new, inexplicable ability. What follows is a montage of Hyun and Min enjoying simple pleasures together, playing arcade games where Hyun gradually begins to smile despite herself, singing karaoke together, and laughing at Min's terrible voice, eating ice cream at an outdoor stand while people watching in the park. Throughout these activities, Hyun occasionally glances at the 302 above Min's head, noticing with growing concern that it seems to be slowly counting down like a timer rather than remaining static. During their evening out, neither notices someone secretly filming them from across the street, a person whose face remains hidden but whose intentions become clear in the days that follow. Several days later, Min visits Hyun's apartment after she's missed multiple days of work. He finds her hiding under blankets in her darkened room, the curtains drawn against the outside world. A documentary titled The Killer's Daughter has appeared online, gaining 1 million views within an hour of posting. The video uses footage from their evening out, combined with archived material about her father's crimes and pseudo-psychological analysis suggesting that violent tendencies run in families. Hyun emerges partially from her blanket cocoon, asking anxiously if Min covered his face when coming to visit her. Her concern isn't for herself, she's long accustomed to public scrutiny, but for Min, who could face social ostracism simply for associating with her. Min confirms that he was careful, that no one followed him to her apartment. Min tries to reassure her that he understands how she feels, that the public's morbid fascination will eventually fade as some new controversy captures their attention. But Hyun expresses with raw emotion how deeply betrayed she feels, not just by this latest invasion of her privacy, but by society's persistent expectation that she'll eventually follow her father's path. The cruelest part, she explains, is that whenever she manages to build some semblance of a normal life, people resurface to question why she dares to be happy, what she's trying to prove by functioning as an ordinary person despite her extraordinary legacy. Their intense conversation is interrupted by Hyun's mother, who appears at the bedroom door looking exhausted from her night shift job. She asks Min if he could stay with her daughter while she sleeps, not wanting to leave Hyun alone in her current state. Min readily agrees, concerned about his friend's mental well-being. As her mother leaves the room, Hyun notices the number above Min's head has changed dramatically. No longer 302, but now 331, and counting down rapidly. The change from days to hours and minutes fills her with unnamed dread. Later that evening, Min discovers their refrigerator is nearly empty, containing only condiments and a few wilting vegetables. Concerned about Hyun not eating properly during her self-imposed isolation, he decides to buy groceries from the Shongang Mart downstairs, ignoring her protests about him going out after dark. When he opens the front door, he encounters a middle-aged man whose expression shifts from uncertainty to recognition and then to hatred upon seeing the apartment number. The man forces his way inside, shoving Min backward with unexpected strength. He reveals himself as the father of a young woman killed by Hyun's father 15 years earlier, a girl who would have been 25 years old today if she had lived. The anniversary of his daughter's death has driven him to seek revenge through the twisted logic that taking Hyun's life would somehow balance the scales of justice. A daughter for a daughter. Brandishing a hammer pulled from his jacket, the intruder advances with clear, murderous intent. Min, despite being significantly younger and stronger, is caught off guard by the raw fury behind the attack. He attempts to stop the man, grappling with him in the narrow hallway, but the intruder's grief-fueled rage gives him unnatural strength. He strikes Min with the hammer, the blow landing with sickening force, and sending Min crashing to the floor, unconscious and bleeding from a head wound. Hyun watches this unfold from her bedroom doorway, paralyzed initially by shock, and then by the terrifying acceleration of Min's countdown timer. The numbers above his head spin downward rapidly as the intruder grabs his unconscious form by the collar, declaring his intention to kill Min first, forcing Hyun to watch before killing her slowly, maximizing her suffering as he believes her father did to his daughter. Something shifts in Hyun's expression as she processes these threats. She moves to the kitchen, retrieving a knife from the drawer. Her movements are methodical, almost detached, as if she's operating on autopilot. In her mind, a dangerous thought forms. If everyone has always expected her to become a killer like her father, perhaps she should fulfill their expectations. Perhaps this is the inevitable path her genetics and social conditioning have prepared her for all along. As she approaches the intruder from behind, knife raised and eyes cold with resolve, a hand seizes her wrist from behind with iron strength. Number has appeared silently in the apartment, having followed the escalating situation with growing interest. He forces her to drop the knife, asking with genuine curiosity if this is what she truly wants, if becoming the monster everyone expects is her choice, or merely her surrender to their expectations. Before Hyun can answer this profound question, Number slices her throat with a quick, precise movement of his own knife. Blood pours from the wound as she collapses to the floor, her eyes wide with shock and betrayal. The motion is so fast, so clinical, that it takes several seconds for the pain to register in her consciousness. In that moment of chaos, Number notices a phone positioned on a bookshelf, its camera light indicating active recording. Someone, perhaps the intruder, perhaps another party, had been live streaming the break-in, capturing the violence for public consumption. Number throws his knife with remarkable precision, slicing through the device and cutting the transmission, but the damage is already done. Images of Hyun with a knife, apparently about to commit murder, are now circulating online, confirming the public's worst suspicions about her. As he retrieves his knife, Number contemplates what drove Hyun to attempt murder, whether it was inherited traits from her father's genetic makeup or society's relentless expectations that pushed her toward violence. The question troubles him more than it should, introducing doubt into his previously certain worldview about the immutability of the numbers he sees. The intruder, momentarily forgotten during Number's intervention with Hyun, regains his focus. Despite witnessing Hyun's throat being cut by this strange newcomer, he remains fixated on his mission of revenge, lunging toward her prone form to finish what he came to do. Number intercepts him easily, choking him until he falls unconscious again. Number notes with professional interest that there's a 1 floating above the intruder's head, marking him as someone who will take only one life if left unchecked. Bleeding profusely but still conscious against all medical probability, Hyun looks up at Number with questioning eyes. Her lips move, forming the words to ask who he is, though little sound emerges from her damaged throat. Number kneels beside her, explaining with the same detachment he shows to all his victims that she has 4,126 above her head, an unprecedented number indicating she's destined to take over 4,000 lives if allowed to continue living. Hyun's eyes widen in disbelief, her mind struggling to process this information through the haze of blood loss and shock. She gestures weakly, asking if this number represents her remaining time to live, reflecting the common human assumption that our time is measured in days rather than impact. Number corrects her misunderstanding, explaining that the number represents future victims, not remaining lifespan. The revelation seems to strike Hyun deeply, her expression shifting from confusion to something more complex. Perhaps understanding, perhaps acceptance of a truth she had feared her entire life. As consciousness begins to fade, Number asks if she has any last words, the same courtesy he extends to all his targets. With her remaining strength, Hyun gestures toward the unconscious intruder, asking why Number didn't kill him instead, given that he was actively trying to murder both her and Min. Number explains his philosophy with unexpected patience, given the circumstances. People with number 1 above their heads aren't targets, because killing one person to save another creates no net change in the balance of lives lost. His mission is efficiency, maximizing lives saved through minimal intervention, and eliminating ones doesn't advance that goal. Hyun whispers that she understands now, a faint smile crossing her face as her eyes begin to close. Something in her response, in her comprehension of his logical but inhuman calculus, resonates with Number. As he prepares to deliver the final blow to ensure her death, something extraordinary happens. The number floating above Hyun begins to change, rapidly decreasing from 4,126 to smaller and smaller values, eventually settling on 1. Number freezes, knife poised above her, witnessing something he believed impossible. In all his years of using his ability, the numbers have been fixed destinies, immutable futures that could only be prevented through death. Yet Hyun's potential for violence has somehow been reduced through understanding alone, through the simple explanation of his philosophy. The implications stagger him, recalling a promise he once made to himself years earlier. If numbers could decrease naturally, if destiny could change without death, he would stop killing. His moment of philosophical crisis is interrupted when the intruder attacks again, having regained consciousness during this exchange. During the ensuing struggle, Number notices another impossibility. The man's number increases from 1 to 2, as his rage and determination to kill both Hyun and Number intensifies. This second confirmation of changeable destinies further shakes Number's rigid worldview before he ends the fight by driving his knife through the intruder's forehead. Hearing police sirens approaching, likely responding to the cut livestream that showed violence in progress, Number makes a split-second decision. Rather than leaving Hyun to die, as he would normally do, he quickly bandages her neck wound with supplies from their bathroom and carries her unconscious form to his car parked several blocks away. Hours later, Hyun wakes up in an abandoned building, immediately noticing she's been chained to a support beam to prevent escape. Number sits nearby, watching her with the clinical interest of a scientist observing an experiment. He explains that by all rights, she should be dead. Would be, if he hadn't bandaged her wound and provided basic medical attention. When Hyun questions why he would save someone he had tried to kill, Number describes the unprecedented event he witnessed, how her number dropped to 1 after he answered her question, somehow altering what he had always believed was fixed fate. The concept clearly troubles him, challenging the foundation of his entire mission. More personally, he tells her that her friend Min is alive because of her intervention. In the original path of events that Number had observed countless times before, the intruder would have killed Min, and Hyun would have killed the intruder in revenge, beginning her descent into violence. Somehow, through choices and understanding not yet clear to either of them, she changed everything. Days later, we see Number driving with Hyun beside him in the passenger seat, her neck bandaged but healing. She's no longer restrained, having agreed to accompany him when he explained that she's now suspected of attempted murder because of the cut livestream footage showing her with a knife. Her face appears periodically on news broadcasts as police search for the killer's daughter, who appears to be following in her father's footsteps. Given a brief opportunity to return to her apartment for essential items, Hyun secretly packs supplies with the intention of escaping Number's custody at the first opportunity. Her planning is interrupted when Min arrives unexpectedly, having been worried sick about her disappearance following the break-in. He's relieved to find her alive, but immediately concerned about her packed bags and bandaged neck. Min informs her that her mother has been hospitalized after collapsing from stress when the police questioned her about Hyun's whereabouts. He urges Hyun to return home to clear her name, insisting that the video footage is inconclusive and she could explain everything. Overcome with emotion and guilt, Hyun admits the terrible truth, that she had genuinely wanted to kill the intruder. In that moment, before Number stopped her, she had fully intended to become what everyone always feared she would be. The confession brings tears as she wonders if perhaps everyone was right about her all along, that she is indeed like her father, a destined murderer whose violent nature was merely dormant until provoked. Rather than staying to face these complex emotions and legal consequences, Hyun returns to Number's van, finding a strange comfort in the company of someone who understands both her potential for violence and her desire to defy that potential. Number explains his mission in greater detail, how he eliminates potential murderers before they can act, creating a net reduction in deaths through his calculated interventions. He promises to protect Hyun as long as her number remains at 1, a strange alliance formed between potential killer and active vigilante. Meanwhile, the investigation into Number's killings has taken an unexpected turn. A detective examines Hyun's room, seeing 200 floating above her photograph, revealing that he shares the same ability to see numbers that Number and Hyun possess. He instructs his team to find her as their only lead to capturing the notorious serial killer, though he keeps his true reasons and abilities secret from his colleagues. Elsewhere in the city, a terrified woman calls emergency services about a stalker loitering outside her apartment door. The dispatcher explains with bureaucratic detachment that they can't arrest someone just for loitering in a public hallway without evidence of threats or violence. In desperation, the woman asks if they'll only act once she's dead, a question that hangs in the air, unanswered but painfully relevant in a city where preventative justice has failed so many victims. 9 hours later, we find Hyun eating cereal in Number's van, complaining about the limited food options available in their nomadic lifestyle. Number explains he avoids unexpected variables in his routine to minimize risks, including different foods that might cause illness or unexpected interactions that might expose his identity. His entire existence is organized around his mission, leaving little room for ordinary pleasures or human connections. That night, Number returns to the van smelling of blood. His clothes changed, but the metallic scent unmistakable to Hyun's heightened senses. He tells her matter-of-factly that he killed 2 people, one with 5 and one with 3 above their heads, potentially saving 8 future victims through his actions. The clinical way he describes ending human lives disturbs Hyun, despite her own brush with violence. Suddenly, Hyun's newly acquired power activates in an unexpected way, showing her 911 above Number's head rather than a simple digit. The anomaly puzzles her. Is it a date rather than a number? Does it represent something else entirely? Number's surprised reaction to her ability to see his number confirms this is unusual, further suggesting they're entering uncharted territory in their shared ability. The next day, Hyun watches people passing by their parked van, trying to understand the patterns behind the numbers she sees. She notices a woman with her young child, both bearing 831 above their heads, a strangely specific and identical number. Listening carefully, she overhears the woman's phone conversation, discussing harassment from a stalker who's been publishing her contact information online and making false reservations in her name, escalating behaviors that have police concerned but unwilling to act without direct threats. Number appears beside Hyun, asking what numbers she sees above the woman and child. After some hesitation, Hyun shares her developing theory, that the numbers might represent remaining time rather than future victims. The identical 831 suggests the family will die simultaneously, likely by 8:31 that evening. Number studies the situation and confirms her observation, noting a man with 3 above his head watching the family from across the street, the stalker whose number matches the 3 potential victims. Acting on impulse and newfound responsibility, Hyun attempts to warn the woman and child. As she approaches them, the stalker coincidentally bumps into the woman. The woman recognizes him immediately, her face transforming with fear as she clutches her child protectively and creates distance. Number reveals to Hyun that she finally got what she wanted as they found about the stalker and asked whether the number above the woman and the child's head change. Hyun shockingly reveals that number is still the same. Number pulls Hyun aside, explaining in low tones that their fate appears sealed, as once the number has been set, it can't be changed, and the woman and child will die in 7 hours and 4 minutes unless he intervenes by killing the stalker first. The precision of his prediction suggests his ability might include more detailed information than just the numbers themselves, perhaps intuitive knowledge about timing and circumstances that he's developed through experience,